Dear friend, let's discover more of who we are together. Love, Haley and Amanda.
Happy 2-year anniversary! It's our 2-year wedding anniversary.
Amanda,
of our podcast.
I've never... Okay.
Of our podcast, 2
I know.
years.
June 2020, we sat on the carpet in your house. It's a rug. She doesn't have carpet. She's not gross. And we were like, let's do this. We went for a run.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Honestly, it was a moment of... We got back from the run. We sat down. You were sitting in my green chair. I was on my rug. And I said, let's start a podcast together. We should do this.
Why don't we do that?
We need to do that. And you said, yeah, let's do it. And literally,
Yep.
because we said, do we have mics? Yeah. And then I looked to my husband and said, do we have some kind of interface? And he goes, yeah, I bought you one for your keyboard last year that you never used. And I was like, cool. And I said, how many inputs does it have? And he said 2. And we said, we have a podcast.
We were 2.
Do I have GarageBand? We have a podcast.
And then we brainstormed by just writing the funniest stuff we could think of, and then we said it on mics.
Yes. And if you listen to the first episode, it is all about what we won't talk about on the podcast. And honestly, it is a masterclass on comedy.
Honestly, I listen to it when I'm down.
It's funny.
It is not professional.
It has nothing to do with the way our podcast has turned out.
It sounds pretty bad.
Excuse me.
And
I engineered that.
Also, the theme song is one of our band's songs called Not Ready. So we kept just saying that our theme song was not ready.
Yeah, we kept working on it. It was not ready. But it just was the song. It was a lot of jokes that we thought were funny, and probably 2% of the world thought was funny.
It is a risk, because if people discover our podcast and they listen to that first, it doesn't have to do with what our podcast is, but it could be just funny enough that they know we're lovely friends.
But one of the best parts of the first podcast is that we came up with our pledge.
Yes!
Okay, and we have to do that because it is something that makes 0 sense with our podcast, except that we like puns, and that is it.
But also
nothing else. Don't try to make it something. It isn't.
It's a pledge to our friendship.
Oh, really? What's the pledge? We live under God?
We're pledging to each other, united mates.
What are we pledging?
We're indivisible.
Okay, here we go.
We can agree to disagree.
I am disagreeing hard.
But you want it on the merch.
Yeah, it's funny as hell. Okay, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United Mates in America. Wow, I'm so glad that's meaningful. And rarely in public is where we stand, which in the pandemic we didn't.
Yeah.
One friendship under God, not
indivisible.
Really. What that means though, like not really, just like
we're just under,
because I mean
he's in the sky.
Yeah, indivisible. Live Purdy.
Live Purdy is
liberty, but a play on words.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
it's
really
funny.
mean anything. Okay. And just us for all. That part makes sense, but it's not a pledge to us.
But just us, that's funny.
For justice.
And that is a tight pun.
Yeah.
Tight.
So glad
Just
we
us.
did that.
Well, happy 2-year. I'm proud of us.
I am too. I think, we've been consistent, and podcasting, like we've said in the past, is a long game. And I am really proud of the content we've been putting out. And this is kind of, this episode is a recap of this year, but also some of the things we've been learning through this year with the guests that we've had. And we're just going to get into it.
I know.
Let's
do it. Let's recap this bitch.
Okay. So this year we had some of the best guests. Our first year we had incredible guests.
We did have incredible guests our first year.
And then this year I think we upped our game.
We did.
Because we had Olivia Constance, who is the owner of Fountain and Table, and we did a 2-parter with her.
Yeah, it was so juicy we had to do part 2.
Well, because she's just a very soulful person, and she's the kind of person who, yes, she has this beautiful career where she works in hospitality and she has this restaurant, Fountain and Table, but she's so much more that she brings through that.
Yes. and talking about connection with people and quality of things. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, like both of those sessions I left really lifted up and inspired and
nourished.
Yeah, she was a very soulful person.
Totally.
And then after her, we had Kay Strain, who's our cycling teacher, and her health journey. She's incredible. Yeah. Her journey, she's just this very fit with it person, but her journey to getting where she was, I had no idea of her story until we interviewed her.
She's overcome so much.
And still does. Her health, like with her health, and she's very inspiring too.
Very inspiring. And I know that we're doing the recap, but also our podcast, and I think we kind of established this in year 2 from the Young Pueblo quote, which I don't know all of it, but it's about, sometimes it's just an honest conversation with a dear friend is just what you need to like stay aligned and
get back up into the world and
with that new and focused energy. And throughout all of these guests that we're listing, it's like they all do different things. They're all in a different like niche of life, but all of them are trying to do that. And we have a conversation with them.
They're trying to get aligned to what they're trying to be in the world.
Yes.
And every time we talked to them, we came out with a new and focused energy.
Correct.
And I honestly feel like even the conversations with just you and I.
With just us for all.
Yeah. Every time we prepared for an episode, I took away something myself. You know what I mean? Like totally. It was, I feel like every time I left the conversation and we would go back out into the world, I just felt more focused.
I agree.
So we also had the amazing artist, Kyle Steed.
Yes, he has quite a few listens.
He does. He's one of our biggest episodes because he's a very well-known artist, and so he has a big following, but he was very vulnerable and open with us about really personal things in his journey, and that was a very hard episode for us because it was recorded the day after finding out that our dear friend Chadwick Murray had passed away.
Yeah, and we were in a very
vulnerable,
tender place, and so to go and interview someone, and we decided to just do it.
And we got there to the interview and told him, hey, we're going to be honest. This is where we are right now, and we're very emotional, but we still wanted to do this interview. And he was so gracious
soft
and
tender with us.
He was really, I loved that interview.
And that episode is called Becoming, which is like one of our favorite words because we kind of feel like we're all just evolving and you don't know what you're going to be, and it doesn't matter because you're consistently evolving. And he really dives into that concept and shares how he's been evolving. Highly recommend that episode.
Me too. Then we had Jillian Bradshaw Smith.
Oh my goodness.
Who is a very prolific,
eccentric
artist here in Oak Cliff. She is from the UK.
Yep. Oh my gosh, what a story.
But she's one of those people who like explored her creativity through many different avenues of art. And she just kind of was open to all of it. And she was building the sets for the ballet, the New York Ballet. She has an incredible portfolio of work.
She made sculptures and she was in the New York Times.
And she's one of those people in the neighborhood that we didn't know. And someone was like, y'all don't know Jillian Bradshaw Smith. Like, you have to go to lunch with her. You have to get to know her because she's just what she's accomplished in life. And she's just this beautiful woman,
Man, our journeys are unbelievable.
Yes. So I really liked diving into her story and journey. That's also a great episode. And then we had Bonnie Davis.
Twice.
Okay, guys, Bonnie Davis, she's a friend of ours, but she is a breathwork specialist. She is a masseuse. She has a lot of certification and training just about mindfulness and working with the body.
Yes.
And she came on, and I'm telling you, every person who's reached out to us about her episodes talks about how her voice and presence on the podcast is so calming and just peaceful. I go back and listen to that episode just to hear her speak.
And she leads us through in the mindful breathing one, or meaningful breaths, like a breathing exercise, and it's very short, but if you need to like be grounded in the middle of some chaos, just go do that real quick.
And she's just a wonderful person.
Oh man, we're gonna start having her on like consistently,
we need to have her
like
on
a quarterly Bonnie episode.
Yeah, she makes life feel doable. Yeah. And then we have Patrick Crane,
Mr. Pink Pants,
who owns and operates Fernware Studio, where we record our podcast. We had him on right when we joined Fernware to start letting them do our engineering and audio, and he kind of talks about his journey to this studio, and he's a really nice guy.
Yeah,
I like him.
Yeah,
and he's doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then we have the Baha'i Girls. So that was a really fun episode because it's this, well, we had 2 of the 3.
Yeah. It was a lot of girl bubbly energy here.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed it.
It was good.
It was a lot of giggling, and I like to giggle.
But we talk about food and culture and connection with people and getting your hands dirty and being a female and a
woman of color.
Oh my gosh.
In the industry, like the food industry, and stepping out and kind of representing your culture in the way that they have, and in a different way than just opening a restaurant. They do all these pop-up dinners, and it was a really inspiring interview as well.
Look them up.
And then finally, the last guest we had on,
who was our last episode, actually.
Yeah, before our anniversary, is Caitlin Coffey.
Oh, my goodness.
And she's a design influencer, and she was really funny. And I told her, I whenever we released the episode, I sent her this message. I said, hey, I just listened to the episode. I just want you to know you were one of my favorite guests. You are so funny but very insightful. And she goes, I really thought you guys probably thought I was crazy and all over the place. And I said, you weren't. It's like the episode is a really good episode.
And it's actually climbing the charts to be our most listened to episode and most viewed, because don't forget, you can watch our interviews now on YouTube.
Yeah, with professional video.
And this wasn't a guest, but our most listened to and most viewed episode is still our conversation around the book Every Room Should Sing by Beata Human.
This is crazy to us.
What's happening with
We don't
this
understand
episode?
the stats on this. So we did a part 1 and 2 of Beata Human's design book that you got me for my birthday last year, and I loved it. And it's such a great book. And we just decided to talk through it because there's things that she says in the book that are beyond design, just
Of
super
course.
insightful.
Yes.
And that is like grossly above the charts on our streaming services and on YouTube. And we'd like to know why. So if that's an episode you really enjoyed, you should message us and tell us what it is about those episodes, because I like them for a lot of reasons, but I'm curious to know why it is our top listened to.
It's staggering.
It is.
It's not like she has 5 more views than everyone, so she's the top view. It's like hundreds more.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I loved those episodes. It's just us talking about the book and through the book, but I guess the content was as inspiring to others as it was to us.
Yeah, totally. So we've learned a lot of things, like by talking, how you were just saying, you know, after every episode, we feel like invigorated and want to go back out into the world. So we wanted to talk about some of the things that really moved us and stuck with us.
Well, because I think one of the perks of doing a podcast is that we're getting,
Nourishment.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. It's selfish.
But also but the types of people we get to interview, it's kind of like the what color is your parachute? In the book where, you'll find out more next week when we interview Will Flato about that.
You just dropped his name. Oh.
I did. But that idea of taking someone out to lunch to kind of learn from them, like we're getting to do that in a podcast.
Yeah, and the truth is that we have people on because they seem inspiring to us. They're doing interesting stuff, but we're always surprised about what the actual nourishment nugget is that we take from it. It's always a surprise because you don't really know until you get into these conversations.
We come in with questions and an idea, but we try to be open to letting the conversation kind of go to and be a little bit natural and see where it takes us. And I'm always surprised at the end of they're never what I think they're going to be typically. And it's nice. I'm just saying it's nice for me too, because I really leave feeling like, whoa, I got some good stuff to go back out into the world with.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
And when we prepare for our solo episodes, like when it's just us, it's usually around stuff you and I have been contemplating and thinking about for a very long time, and having this discussion with each other. And then we get to finally kind of make a culmination of our thoughts about it and share it here, which is nice.
Yeah. Our favorite poet who we talk about all the time,
he comes
David
up
Whyte,
almost every episode.
Whyte, which I didn't even know I was going to say this. See?
Spontaneous.
He talks about like his catchphrase more or less for what his philosophy is in his poetry is that life is like a conversation. Like there's a conversational nature of reality. And it means that like what you think is going to happen, like, will not fully happen. And what the other person or what reality thinks is going to happen is also not what's fully going to happen. Because when two things happen together and you enter into a space where you're collaborating and you're fully present, this conversation happens in life and an actual conversation where new things unfold that you weren't expecting. And so, again, I mean, honestly, another thing I'd just like to say is have meaningful conversations with people in your life. Like,
well, my hope is every time someone listens to our podcast, it gets them thinking about something, and they do go have a conversation about it with somebody else, because that's what our conversations do for me. Yeah. And when we speak with, our guests, gets your mind going on that. So we have we made a list of things that keep coming up in the podcast that we're relearning and feel like they're kind of the takeaways from this past year of interviews and what we have been learning personally and bringing to the table. So the first thing is, and I swear every conversation that we have, it literally comes back to what are your intentions and your motivation behind the things that you're doing. Because if they're good, the thing is going to be okay and good. You know what I mean? Like,
and that
everything.
Intentions don't have a box, or like you can't really see how it plays out, but the heart behind it is there. And so you're open to however it plays out.
Right.
If that makes sense. And I think it's interesting, too, that every time you say intention, you grab your, like, chest area, like your heart.
Yeah.
You don't, like, grab your mind and say, your intentions are good.
Yeah.
Because it's
like this underlying, your motives behind what you're doing. It's, you meet people who have underlying intentions when they're talking to you or trying to accomplish something. We know what that feels like. But when you're going into something with good intentions, it's really hard to fail, even if technically you do fail, because you're doing it with that good intention.
Yeah, and to get to a place where you have clear, good intentions, you have to kind of do meaningful work on yourself, and like I feel like us having this podcast and meeting with inspiring people and like trying to do our hard work on ourselves, it just kind of like shaves down those intentions so that they're more and more pure. It's kind of hard to just be flailing about in the world and not be mindful of anything and have great intentions.
Yeah. And then obviously another thing that keeps coming up is like us just celebrating life through the small stuff.
Yeah, we have a lot of episodes that we didn't mention that are just us, that are just about like how to make the fall season special.
The ritual of tea.
Yeah, like really being mindful about beauty in your life and how you're spending your time. And
finding beauty in the world is something that I think is so important to both of us. Mm-hmm. And it's been a huge influence on the things that we've been sharing, especially this past year. Like I feel like coming out of COVID and that isolation period, being back out in the world, we're really trying to find the beauty in all the stuff that we're doing, because it made us realize how beautiful things were that we took for granted, I think. Yeah. So I think that's a big one for us, is the celebrating life through
Yes.
all things.
I agree too. And I think that us as friends, I was going to say partners, but not to be misconstrued, just partners in life, like we help each other to celebrate the small things. And it's good to have people in your life that help you make sure you're doing that.
And then the other thing we decided was like the big takeaway is that metaphor that David White talks about playing your full keyboard. So this is something I think about.
Yeah, let's do a little explanation of that.
Yeah, so for me, the metaphor is that we're all this big keyboard, and we have all these notes that we can play. And sometimes when we kind of focus in on like maybe our job or something that we're doing every day, we're playing like these same 3 notes over and over again. And we're so much more than that chord. You know what I mean? We have all this to offer, but we just keep playing these 3 notes over and over because it's required of us, it's expected of us, and then we're missing out on all of these other things that we bring to the table. And something that you and I have talked about that we are really intentional about is playing those other keys. Like even if we have a full-time job where we have to be playing 3 notes a lot, we make time outside of that job to play all these other, like with our band, with the podcast, with our friendships, with our other interests and hobbies. Like we're trying to make space for the other notes because I don't want to be a person that's playing the same 3 keys. That's boring.
It is boring and it wears you down and you don't step into your fullness. And I would recommend actually our episode on breaks.
Yeah.
Which is like a pretty recent one that we both ended up loving unexpectedly. And it talks about this a lot, how, you know, if you just do the same thing all the time and you don't give yourself a break for the rest of yourself, your keyboard to come into its fullness, well, then, I mean, you're just wearing yourself out.
Well, and we focus so much on what we do for a living as a, I don't know, society. It's just like, what do you do for work?
Money.
What do you like? What do you do? What do you do?
What do you do?
Yeah. Well, we do a lot. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be just a teacher. You don't have to be just one thing. Like, I hate that question because I feel like
we got to think of a new one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, we're so much more than our jobs. And I feel like we focus on those 3 notes. You know, I'm putting that in air quotes, like your job. I'm just comparing it to like your 3 notes, that you are not just that. Like, you are so much more. And I think we can get bogged down by that, what we do, and we don't allow ourselves a space of these other beautiful things we have to offer that'll help us play that chord better.
Totally.
You know what I mean? And that chord sounds better with this chord. And the metaphor goes hard.
Oh, man.
Really hard.
Yes. And then lastly, we were just going to say that, and we talked about this, I think it was on our episode about routines versus risk, maybe.
Yeah. I love that episode.
Yeah, we read this poem by David White called My Courageous Life. And I think this is another big takeaway for us. Like,
is that in his book, Still Possible?
It is.
It's his new book.
It's the last poem in the book, actually.
Yeah.
And it talks about, and we can read a couple of sentences from it, but it talks about, you know, that we have this courageous version of ourselves that is deep inside of us and that it's ahead of us. Almost if you imagine like yourself out in the future, the best version, the person you want to be, your most true self. And that courageous life is kind of like beckoning your present self forward.
Yeah.
And I think in the midst of all of these different conversations, just trying to like move forward by considering that courageous person first, you know, and trying to make decisions from that place in you and trying to.
And it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, because it's brave. And like, I mean, courage, I guess it's defined by doing something that kind of scares you. Otherwise, you're not being courageous. You're being regular.
Yeah.
Do you want to read a little bit of it, or what do you think?
Yeah. So the poem is called My Courageous Life by David White. Again, that's Whyte. And whenever we read this, we both got the book, and we went on a trip to like Washington, D.C., and we were in the hotel, and we were like, have you read this poem yet, My Courageous Life, in the book? And because it was one that really stuck out to both of us. Do you want me to read the whole thing?
I mean, I love it, and it's not that long.
Okay.
If you want.
So it says, my courageous life has gone ahead and is looking back, calling me on. My courageous life has seen everything I have been and everything I have not, and has forgiven me day after day. My courageous life still wants my company, wants me to understand my life as witness, and thus bequeath me the way ahead. My courageous life has the patience to keep teaching me how to invent my own disappearance and how once gone to reappear again. My courageous life wants to stop being ahead of me so that it can lie down and rest deep inside my body it has been calling on. My courageous life wants to be my foundation, showing me day after day.
Oh, that's not the end of it, but I guess we lost
We'll
it.
stop there.
We'll stop
oh, wait,
there.
here it is. No. It's cut off. Cool.
Cut off. Cool.
Well, I guess you got to get the book.
Yeah.
Because it's really
Cliffhanger.
good. But it gives you the idea that, those of us who are open to looking at the hard stuff, you know what I mean? That you're trying to not stay in the same patterns, and you're trying to be led on by this courageous version of yourself who's out there doing the things that may seem scary and difficult. Like, I think we've talked with so many people this year on this podcast about people. There are people who have done amazing things, and it's because they were, I think, led on by that courageous version of themselves.
Yeah.
And that's inspiring.
It is.
And it makes me want to be like that.
Yes.
And I'm trying to be more like that. And
I think you're doing a good job.
so are you.
Thanks.
We have to encourage each other. Also, get a friend that encourages your courageous self.
So let's see. We've kind of talked about the past and recapping.
I know.
And, we're nervous I am to kind of talk about what's
The future?
happening. Yeah, the future and our dreams, because we have these little baby dreams that are our babies.
And you don't cast your pearls before the
You don't
swine.
cast your babies before the swine.
And y'all aren't swine. You're not.
But we're starting now our third year of
Marriage?
the podcast. You said that
I know
earlier.
it was a joke. But we have some big plans, and they're exciting to us. And there's something that we have been dreaming about. Honestly, I want to say it wasn't at
Year
the very
2.
beginning, but it was at the beginning of year 2.
It's when we rebranded as Dear Friend Podcast.
Yeah, because at the beginning of the podcast, we were the Haley and Amanda podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And the graphic designer we were working with to kind of give us a brand, just to make us look more professional, I guess, to make us look more legit. He said, I've been listening to the podcast, and I really feel like y'all should just be called Dear Friend Podcast, because
He
you
came
feel
up with it.
like you're talking with a dear friend. Like y'all, he said, when you're listening to you guys, you feel like you're talking to a dear friend. And it just really resonated with us, that
Yeah.
name. And we sat with it for a while, and we decided that, yes. And we have a whole episode about
The name.
what
and
that means to us,
Yes.
more in depth. But
we already knew at that time that we wanted to have two, like a more short-term goal and then a very, very long-term goal of how the podcast played out.
yeah, so one of the things that we want to do with this podcast is, I mean, I'm sure you've heard about podcasts doing live events and things like that. And that doesn't seem like that never kind of registered with us to do something like that. We are performers in the sense that with our music, the energy on stage and what we get from performing and our dynamic on stage is really fulfilling. But that's just not it just didn't feel right with the podcast to do a more performative thing, because these are really intimate conversations about really sometimes difficult topics. And one thing about Haley and I that we share, and you can elaborate on this too, is we love like hosting people and taking care of them.
It is a lot.
And that comes down to like the details of setting a table, all the way to just being in an intimate setting with people and having the conversations that go a little bit deeper than the normal, and even deeper than that. And that's very fulfilling to us.
And we do, like you were saying, as performers, when we played music on stage, there would be a lot of people that we didn't know, and so we would banter and stuff. But where we really feel like the juice, or as Olivia would say, the fatty part, is in these like more intimate conversations where we love to meet people, but we don't want to have like a bunch of frivolous
conversations.
Yeah, and like people, like I don't have interest in like being in a group where I can't actually make a connection that would last past that moment.
Yeah, it's something about music that I find really interesting, that every time we perform, when you're on stage, you have such a connection to the audience. And then when the show's over, it's like you have these brief moments with a lot of different people that you're meeting who are like, hey, I love the music, or like, when's your next album coming out? Or, you know what I mean? It's like these little conversations, and then you're packing up your gear. And then it's usually like us sitting at the bar with our band members having a really nice time before we leave.
Right.
But, and then if you think about like going to your favorite band's concert, you're getting this crazy encounter with them, and then they get on their tour bus and go to the next city. And that's like a weird thing, because there's people who are introverted and wouldn't want those connections. But then I also feel like it would be really hard to have these big adrenaline moments, not get anything beyond it with the people you just connected to, and then move to the next place and do it again.
So, actually, us performing, we started as a duet.
Yeah, just acoustic.
And even while we did play full band, bigger shows, we still always play as a duet, and we'll do like private events, or we'll do something more intimate.
Yeah, outside of the band.
Yeah, and we always have this like crazy connection with these smaller groups.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the defining moments of our like lives.
What kind of spurred this podcast?
Yeah, it was we played at a event for Amy Jo Martin, who was also on the podcast.
Our first year guest.
Yes, and she kind of spoke into our lives that we had this like really magical dynamic that came across, and that yes, our music was nice, and like us singing together was beautiful or whatever, but that there was something about our dynamic being shared that came across.
Because it was a more intimate setting. It was a women's conference. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like we were on stage. We were kind of at their level, and we got to storytell, and it was a really interesting experience.
So when quarantine hit in 2020, that all was cut off.
Yeah, playing music live was cut off. That it felt like our dynamic that we couldn't share it, couldn't be shared.
Which is fine, and we were fine with it, but we really were missing that, and we thought, what is a safe way to keep doing this? And so honestly, COVID kind of, which I think a lot of people have said, and I don't say this lightly, gave us a sort of gift just by, I think when things are like closed off to you, you have to look in other ways in other areas. And so I'm not sure if we would have ever started a podcast if it wasn't for that, because we couldn't play, we couldn't have events. And so we were like, how can we do this? And then this was born.
And one of the things I want to say about that Amy Jo Martin conference that we played at that was really cool was, so it was at this event space that was actually Susie Batiste, who owns Poo-Pourri. She is an incredible person in the wellness community outside of that too. But she hosted this event at her really cool home, which is an old chapel that she turned into her home. And she kept the what you would call the sanctuary part, like a very open concept space.
You talk about good acoustics.
Yeah, the acoustics, and they were incredible.
Sidebar.
So the event was that they had this big dinner party. They had been there at the conference doing these workshops, a retreat. Then they had, the night that we came, a dinner party, a cocktail hour mingling, a dinner party, and then we performed and spoke. And then we hung out there until like 4 in the morning doing magic tricks. I mean, it got ridiculous. Yeah. So it was...
in a good way.
It was really, really amazing experience. And we left that so inspired, so happy. And then Amy Jo has a podcast called Why Not Now? And it was like after leaving that experience, we latched onto the podcast.
And all of the women there, we all exchanged information.
Yeah, but the podcast was like this lifeline to what we had been talking about because of Amy Jo.
Yes.
Anyways, this sparked something really big for us. And this is what we are going to launch this year. Which is scary to say because it's something you and I have been talking about for a year and we're putting it out in the world. But we are going to do an event. We're going to do our first one and we're going to see how we can make it better and grow. But it's going to be called Just Us Dinners. And the idea is that we're going to come into a community of people. So it would be like a bunch of different people invited, and they bring their dear friend. And we do a live recording of our podcast around a topic like we always do. Maybe have a guest.
But in a very like intimate setting, so we're all just kind of sitting around.
We picture it at somebody's house right now that we do the live recording around a topic. And then we have a dinner set up where we all go to dinner and we have kind of curated guided questions around the topic, not like a creepy, now we're going to talk about this, but like to help the conversation keep going around what our episode was about, to extend, because a lot of times when we have these conversations, we could go a lot further with them and there's branched questions off of it. And we want to give an opportunity to sit at a table with a group of people and really go there in the conversation instead of, sometimes when you get together with folks, you end up talking about things.
What do you do?
Yes. But it's normal and there's social anxieties. And I feel like when you're around a more curated, like Priya Parker's book, Art of Gathering, which we've been reading 100%. To prepare for this, about giving people handrails through events so that they're not flailing in a weird social environment. What do I do now?
What do I say? Who's this person?
But that it's a very curated event so that people get to have those in-depth connections with some strangers, but also have the safety of their dear friend there, and that we kind of get to have these moments with an intimate group of people
where we can share these episodes. We know we're sharing them with you this way, but a personal connection that then we can all go back out into the world, and the podcast can be like your lifeline, but back to us so that, and then if the people like it, they will have met this new small group of people with,
they might did that night.
Yeah, they may not like every person there. How could you? But, maybe you meet 2 or 3 new really impactful people, and then the next one, maybe they want to host it. And, we're just slow, intentional, conversational connections around meaningful topics and around beauty and hosting.
And human connection.
Yeah.
And I think, so the way that we've talked about it is starting it here in our community, doing a few, but our goal is to branch out to where we're traveling to different states. And so if we're putting it out there that if you want to host a Just Us dinner, and you feel like your community around you, like you could find a group of maybe 10 or 12 people who would be interested in something like this. This is something that we are wanting to launch and do as part of our podcast. And it won't be we'll be still doing the studio episodes, but we want to add these kind of live episodes to have these experience for us, but also to connect you with new people and to connect us with you.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. That's not just the idea. That is the thing we're doing.
Yes, we have some ideas in mind of locations, but we did want to put it out there if you think you have a great idea or wanted to host. So we are in the making stage right now, setting all of this up, but we want to do it definitely this year, 2022.
Yeah, we thought this was a good time to talk about it on our 2-year anniversary because this is something we're going to do in year 3. And it's exciting and it's intimidating and we're going to get better and better at it. But, it's just like when we started this podcast.
Exactly.
It was 2 mics, a weird interface I got for a keyboard and GarageBand. And now we're at Fernware. We're so professional. Oh, my God.
Whoa.
So.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I don't know if what I was going to say
is what you were going to say about the photos?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good.
So we're weird on Instagram because we're not good at it.
Which is another reason, honestly, that we're having the Just Us dinners, and we wanted to do that from the beginning, but it was COVID. because we like people in real life way more than we like
internet connections.
Yeah, social media is like fine, but we want to know who we're connecting with.
Right. And so our social media, we did a big photo shoot with our favorite Dallas photographers.
Who we have been begging to be on the podcast, but they just won't.
They won't because
They're
don't.
too introverted.
They're very introverted, but they're geniuses.
Mm-hmm.
They're called A Sea of Love. It's a husband and wife. They're incredible. Their eye for photography, it's very cinematic. It's very different than a lot of photography that I see. And so they did our photos a year ago that we've been using. They did a beautiful shoot for us that we've been using, and we just did a new shoot with them back in April that we're going to be starting to share those photos.
And we were so excited about it, and we got so creative and dreamy about it, and then they executed above our standard.
And so we thought, okay, we're going to start putting those out really this week when this podcast comes out for our 2-year anniversary. But we wanted to kind of share our creative process about how we we were the creative directors of that photo shoot.
We were, yeah.
And it was really fun.
It was.
So we kind of broke it up in seasons.
Yes.
So we did a fall, winter, spring, summer, and we did different outfit changes through that. And we have a color palette for our brand that we stay within. But
so we had to go like to the thrift store and get clothes that were cool and quirky but represented us, but also stayed in our color scheme, because our closets right now are not just our podcast color scheme.
We have a more neutral base.
Yeah.
So we got to kind of think about the outfits, which was really fun, and kind of the vibe that we wanted to do. So we picked our locations. But my favorite part was we love this photographer and this one session specifically. And he's not just a photographer, like he is a fine artist with his photography.
Yes. Asher Moss.
And this particular scene where he does with these women in towels with their hair wrapped up like they just got out of the shower
by the pool,
and they're smoking cigarettes or whatever, but
just moody.
Yes, we loved this idea. So we got, and our friend JP and Aaron, they own this store neighborhood, which is a beautifully curated store with interiors and art.
So imagine their home
was spectacular, and they had this gorgeous backyard and pool. And so we kind of set up this scene with our dogs. We have 2 Dalmatians where our hair's wrapped up in the towels. We have sunglasses on, and we've got newspapers, and it's the dreamiest summer vibe that every time I go to the pool, it's the experience I imagine I'm going to have.
It was just so fun to be able to like have a silly idea and then
execute it.
Yeah.
And we had Scrabble.
Yes.
We had all of these beautiful pieces to every picture with the dogs and the wine and everything. And I'm really happy with the final product.
Yeah, we can't wait to share them with you guys. Well, you're seeing them now, I guess, now that the episode's out. So
yeah, keep your eyes open for those pictures. We're really excited about them.
But we want to give all the credit to them, A Sea of Love, and for being so sweet. They're such kind people and so collaborative
give them a follow
to us
on Instagram at A Sea of Love,
and hire them always.
Always. They travel. They're incredible.
Yeah.
And a little recap. So where we have been, we recorded some episodes beforehand before we went on a trip, which we mentioned in a few episodes back, where we went to Cornwall in the UK.
That's right.
And this was a trip to celebrate our 18-year friendiversary. We've been friends 18 years, y'all.
28th.
We can smoke. We can drink. No, we can't drink. We can vote. Our friendship can. We're older than 18.
Surprise!
Our friendship, just getting to vote. So this was a really fun trip, and it was my 33rd birthday trip, and I have wanted to go to Cornwall. If y'all don't know Cornwall, it is the cliffiest, beachiest, but like cold beach. You know what I mean? Like you got to wear a sweater, but then when the sun comes out, you take off your sweater and you got your swimsuit on, but then the cloud comes, you got to put your sweater back on. and you got your little hat. It's the best.
And it's like beachy, which you would like associate, especially here in Texas, with like a cold beverage or like, you know, a margarita.
It
But
was like
there,
hot
it's like,
tea.
yeah, you go have cream tea. And
Ugh.
then it's like a lot of combo, especially for you.
It was a lot of my favorite
yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you for
And-
letting me do a lot of my favorite stuff.
Yeah. I mean, well, happy birthday.
Well,
And-
it's a lot of your favorite stuff too.
Yeah.
Don't lie.
But that is definitely, I mean, you said you wanted your first trip out of quarantine
Yeah,
to
my
be.
first international trip
Yeah.
to be Cornwall.
And we did it.
We freaking did it. And it was one of those things where we planned the trip and beforehand, and one of the things was like we found our hotel. We stayed in St. Ives, and we arrive at Paddington Station. We're going to take a night train to Cornwall, and we're
so Wes Anderson-y, what all of this.
we're in our train car where it's bunk beds, and let me tell you,
Miniature.
that was a tight fit. I mean, a tight fit.
It's silly going through those tiny trains
We
like
were
that.
giggling so hard because
Her
my
suitcase
suitcase
got
couldn't
stuck.
roll down the.
It didn't fit in the hallway.
I broke the fire thing off of the hallway. And so we get into the bunk situation, and I just got off the plane. Haley had come from Spain because she had been there for an artist residency. And I'm so delirious. I'm just on another plane.
But it's so funny, and it's so typical of jet lag. When she arrives, you know, I'm like, how you doing? Are you tired? And she's like, no, I'm great. I have so much energy. I can do everything. Let's walk everywhere.
We walked 29,000 steps around London until our train left.
Well, and then like mid-afternoon hits, we sit down for a beer, and I look over, and Amanda's eyes have glazed over.
And I said, I'm not okay. I don't feel good. And I said, I'm going to pass out. I also
Crashed.
I was like, my foot hurts. I was like, help me.
Hmm.
I hit a wall.
Whoa. Yeah.
And so when we got to the train, the ride of that train I was asleep.
Because, y'all, you would think that sleeping on a sleeper train would be, like, uncomfortable. It's so
that
small
was
and
the best
tight.
sleep I've ever had.
Yeah, the bed's comfortable, and you have the moving. It's like you're a baby getting drove around.
I was rocked right to bed.
Oh, my
I mean,
goodness.
I literally had hit the pillow and was gone. But when we got to Cornwall, I said, listen, Haley, I'm kind of worried about our hotel because we booked this. It's kind of a new place. There weren't a lot of reviews. There weren't a lot of pictures. It was just a great price, great location. And I said, I'm very scared if we get there and it's bad, I think we should like lose our deposit and go somewhere else. And she was like, okay. Best part of the trip was our hotel because it was this tiny cutie baby boutique hotel that had a Michelin star chef restaurant in the lobby.
Well, and so the restaurant wasn't a Michelin star restaurant,
But
so they don't have that on the hotel, but the chef just came from.
His Michelin star restaurant to start this because he wanted to live in St. Ives. And so the food was outrageously
And
good.
it's-
included.
Yeah,
Yeah,
included.
Our breakfast was included.
We had a Michelin star breakfast for $3.99 every morning.
Well, but we paid for the nice
Yeah.
course one time because it was the dinner. But we get there and the staff is incredible. They were the best people. We hung out with them. We ended up loving all the staff at the hotel. It was the best part. But the last thing I want to say about the trip, because I know who cares about our travels, but what we did to celebrate our friendiversary, the day of our actual friendiversary on April 28th.
Very typical of us.
We went on a coastal hike to this little town
Zinner.
called Zinner. And there was anyways, it was from St. Ives to Zinner. It was,
But you walk along the coast.
yes.
Yeah.
And the chef at the hotel said, it is a beautiful walk. Y'all are going to love it. It's a beautiful stroll. And so I'm wearing
And he was
this-
like, you might get hungry, so just like take something just in case. But there's a pub at the end where you can have fish and chips and a beer after walking. We're like, okay,
oh, perfect.
yum.
Great. So I'm wearing a Rent the Runway cutie jumpsuit and just cute shoes. And we are on this cute walk. And then the walk turns into where you're like climbing boulders and
Waterfalls.
Yeah. And you're not walking. Just
You're not strolling on
leisurely.
anything.
This
You
is-
don't even know where the path is.
This is a
sometimes.
difficult hike. And at the halfway point, we meet a girl who's come to the other side and she goes, how's the rest of it? Because this part back here is
a little scrambly.
A little scrambly. She's like all red, beet red. And we're like, well, that was a little scrambly too. And she
So
said,
it's not getting better.
and she was like, good luck. And
that's when we pulled out our ham sandwich that, thank God, we packed.
When we hit the pub, that beer never tasted so good. Oh my gosh. It was the best feeling because the walk was beautiful.
It was gorgeous. It just was funny how the chef
it was
told
funny
us.
what I was wearing for that walk.
I at least had like my Blundstones on, my boots.
Yeah, I looked
You
like
had
a
something like, I don't know what you had on.
Yeah, I was an idiot. So it was an amazing trip. We had such a good time. We're back. We're so excited about year 3 with the podcast. And we're excited about the Just Us dinners.
Yeah.
So if that's something that really resonated with you when we said it, please reach out to us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is @dearfriend.podcast.
Because you can't have commas.
Yeah, Instagram doesn't let you have commas. But send us a message and let us know. This is something we're really excited about to launch. It feels really right on a lot of levels about what we like.
Yeah, like a lot of things coming together.
Yes, yes. So we're really excited about it, and we're excited about year 3.
And we'd love to hear, because we're just pulling topics out of what we care about and what's happening to us. So we would love to hear what you care about, what you'd love us to maybe have a conversation around. Any guest that you think may want to come on, we will message anyone. We do not care. We get a lot of no's, but that's okay.
I send messages to a lot of people.
Yeah, I can't wait for Brene Brown to finally answer.
I have not sent her a message. Okay. So again, we are recording at the beautiful Fernware studio that we're so happy to be at. We have Will Flato and
Tresco
on the audio engineering side today. And if you want to follow more about what Fernware is doing, you can follow them at Instagram @Fernware.
Fernware.
Yes. And if you want to watch us, the beautiful video that they do of us, you can go to YouTube to Dear Friend, Podcast.
That's right. And if you like the music that you hear at the beginning and end of our episodes, you can follow us at sistertheband.com, which is our band that we have together.
Yeah. So thanks for listening and thanks for being with us, whatever part of the journey you've come on. If you're original OG that came on episode 1,
you stuck it out with us.
You've watched some changes. We're trying to get better. Thank you. So we're excited about the future and we're glad that you're with us.
Live purdy.